we really didn't call a lot of plays in the half court. We tried to stay away from it. We tried to just let our guys play, which I think was really good because, the longer you can stay in your offense and get that thing from the first side to a second to a third side, the more likely the defense is going to break down at some point.
Welcome to another Coaching You podcast with the Coach Brendan Suhr, presented by Noah Basketball. I'm so excited today. Carlin Hartman, Associate Head Coach at University of Florida, the national champions, 36-4, won their last 12 games to become national champions, and only got by Auburn, defending champ UConn, Auburn, and then, of course, the University of Houston in the final game. This was a magical journey for this incredible team. The Gators were, from top to bottom, they are just a complete team. Offense, defense. Carlin Hartman's going to talk to you about the little inside stuff that makes them go. Elite front court, great wing and point guard players that executed under pressure. But Carlin Hartman is a man of incredible character, substance. He's got the complete package as a coach. He's one of my favorite people. He's a great teacher. We had him at our Florida clinic last year, where he really was amazingly impressive, teaching the Princeton offense. And I thought he was just incredible. So I think you're really going to enjoy what Carlin shares with you. He's really going to go in depth on his coaching journey, the people he's worked for. And this is a really key thing. And talking about everything that he's learned from every coach that he's worked for on his journey, and how his whole, mandate right now for himself is to try to help and pay forward and help other coaches as he's going forward. So I think you're going to find him to be an absolutely elite guest. The podcast is long, but the reason it's long is because he kept sharing nugget after nugget of things that I rarely get to hear and share with coaches. He is the man, and I'll tell you what, you're really going to enjoy this. After we get back from our sponsors, I think you're really going to enjoy Carlin. Let me share with you that this week is finally coming, our Coaching You Live Clinic in Las Vegas, our flagship event. All NBA coaches are our teachers and instructors. Coaching You is a faculty of the best teachers and coaches in the world, and they are here to share for you so that you learn. And I think you're really good. So go to coachingyoulive.com/2025 to register so that you can come, or get our app at Coaching You Plus, PLUS.com, so you can sign up, get our app and learn, but also you can watch the event live. So after this quick timeout, we're coming back, Carlin Hartman, for an hour of unbelievable learning insight. Noah Basketball is our new presenting sponsor of our Coaching You podcast. Noah Basketball is a shot tracking and data company that has helped change how coaches and players perfect the game's most important skill, shooting. Noah is a data service provider that uses machine learning and the latest computer vision technology to provide real-time data and feedback to improve shooting accuracy and consistency for professional and amateur basketball players. Noah has now analyzed over 570 million shots from countless high school, hundreds of college teams, and 28 NBA franchises. The technology is simply amazing. Once the system has been installed, players will be able to get immediate feedback on their shooting arc, left and right positioning, depth, makes or misses, and makes the data available to players and coaches on your mobile device. For more information about how Noah can help your team, visit noahbasketball.com. Coaches, are you looking to take your game preparation to the next level? Then Fast Model Sports is the perfect coaching software for you. With FastDraw, build an organized library of plays and drills and create professional playbooks to share with your players and staff. You can also download over 9,500 free plays and drills from our Playbank directly to your FastDraw account. Looking for a better way to build your scouting reports and want to include video? With Fast Scout, build custom scouting report templates to prepare your team best for each individual opponent. Plus, did you know with the latest updates from Fast Model Sports, you can now include video with your Fast Scout reports and share with your coaches and staff all within the Fast Scout mobile app. The combination of Fast Draw and Fast Scout is by far the best way for you and your coaches to create winning game strategies and effectively communicate them to your team. Over 10,000 high school and youth coaches trust Fast Model Sports products to help their teams reach their goals. To order, go to fastmodelsports.com. Use code COACHINGU15 to get 15% off any Fast Draw or Fast Scout products. Remember, go to fastmodelsports.com. Use code COACHINGU15 to get 15% off any Fast Draw and Fast Scout products. I'm excited today, as I mentioned earlier, our guest, Carlin Hartman, the associate head coach at the University of Florida, a state that I lived in for over 20 years, and I love the state of Florida, loved my Gators from back when Billy Donovan was there, and Todd Golden and your staff have been absolutely great to coaching you. And Carlin, let me tell you something. All year long, when I watched you guys, I just became the biggest Gator fan in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, man. And I'll tell you what, I didn't care if I pissed anyone off, but welcome to the show. And we're so excited to have you.
Thanks, Coach. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here, and got a chance to do the FABC clinic in Tampa last year with coaching you and so forth. So you guys always put out a good product and always are pushing forward the game of basketball. So look forward to being on.
It's because of people like yourself. What our mission is, as I always tell people, is we believe that coaching is the most essential part of the game because coaches help players reach their potential. And if we have great coaching, we have great players, we got a great game. Yeah. And so you and Todd and Corey and the rest of the guys in your staff have been absolutely incredible. And, even with Billy's opportunities to go to 4 Final Fours, I've never seen anything like a team finish out a year the way you guys did. What was that ride like for you guys going through it? 36-4 is amazing, but winning the last 12 games to a national championship, what was that like?
No, it was very magical, honestly. I mean, after we lost the game to Georgia, we knew we had a good team. We didn't play well that night. Got down by 26 points, ended up taking the lead late in the game, ended up losing, didn't deserve the win. But we had just talked to ourselves after the game and, we said, this is a one-off. Let's make sure as we move forward the rest of this year that we become the best version of ourselves every single night. No nights off, no thinking that we're too good because anybody can beat you. And the group that we had was just so. Coach, they were awesome. We had a little bit of everything, obviously, to be able to get to the point where we wanted the whole thing. But, we had great guards. We had great role guys. Mm-hmm. We had great bigs. We had everybody that was okay and comfortable in their roles, and they accepted those roles. And, going through the SEC gauntlet through the regular season and then running the table in the SEC tournament, I think gave our guys just the utmost confidence that you can win any game at any time. And when you have great players, of course, it definitely helps, having, first team All-American Walter Clayton. But it also helps having a veteran in Will Richard, who's the first guy that we signed here as a staff in 2022. It helps having Elijah Martin, who took FAU to a Final Four 2 years ago and, helped us, get to this point because of his mentality as a dog and as a competitive, beast on the perimeter. And then, of course, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I can't say enough about, our front court guys that I coach and I lead with that group. And, every single one of them brought something to the table. We had 5 really, really good ones. And, they did a lot of things that don't always show up on the stat sheet that helped us, claim that title against Houston that night.
One of the things you mentioned earlier was, the maturity of your team, that when you did lose, you could have an adult conversation.
Yeah.
In the old days when you were playing at Tulane, and as you're going up as a player in your early years of your 25-year career of coaching, very, very common for coaches that when you lost, they came in and they yelled, screamed, ripped their ass at the players. As I always say, it was always their fault. It was never my fault as a coach, right? And now I watch Mark Dagnall, who has history with Florida, and I've known him. His wife was a gymnast with my daughter in Orlando, Ashley Kerr. So that little girl used to stay at my house because her folks lived in the Tampa area, and she would stay up there for, a couple of days a week, as a young high school kid. And so to watch how Mark came up, and now his team in over a year has never lost a game after they've lost. I mean, that is absolutely incredible in the NBA.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah. So they have that ability to immediately delete, I call it, and move on to the next game, which is so hard to do, because usually if you come at the players hard, it usually, I think, you go 1 loss to 2 losses to 3, and all of a sudden we can't correct ourselves because of the age of the kids, I think.
Yeah, it's shifted though, right, Coach? I mean, like, how you talk about it, how it was back in the day, and your coach was everything. Your coach was a guy, or the person that was helping essentially raise you, whatever level, high school, college, that was a person that was, the next phase of your life. And so you yearned on every word that they say. Not saying it doesn't happen as much anymore, but, they could, push buttons back then that, you can't push anymore. And I think what we've done is we've learned, and Coach Golden and myself, I've had to adapt and adjust. I think Todd is the best in the country at it, of having organic relationships with these kids so that you can challenge them, so that you can talk to them, every so often. If you have to use some choice words, is what it is, but you got a relationship with them first and foremost,
My friend John Gordon, who's an author, lives in Ponte Vedra, Jacksonville area of Florida. He has a great saying that you have to, the old saying when you and I were coming up about tough love, and he said it's just the opposite now. It's love tough. They have to know you love them first. Then when they do, you can be as tough as you want with them.
That's exactly. That's accurate. Very accurate.
Yeah, I think so. Very accurate. So you have, in your coaching journey, you've worked for some absolutely incredible coaches. We'll talk about, all three, but Kyle Smith, when you were at Columbia, Lon Kruger, who I have the utmost respect for, absolutely incredible. And Todd, if you could talk about the influence of them in your career and how each is different.
Okay. So what I'll do is I want to talk about those three, but I'm going to go back a little bit.
You can even go.
Yeah. So I'll start with Willis Wilson.
Oh, my bad. Yep.
I know. No. A legend. Yeah. No. Coach Wilson gave my first opportunity in coaching back in 1997. I was a restricted earnings coach at Rice back then. You remember the time of the restricted earnings, only 3 coaches essentially can go out on the road. Coach Wilson gave me an opportunity. I had the title of assistant coach, but I couldn't go out and recruit. He taught me professionalism. He taught me what a African American looked like on the sideline. There wasn't that many of them back then, and Coach Wilson was one of the few, and he had great success in a very tough job at Rice. And he was awesome for me during that time. Next guy I'll mention is Chris Mooney. My time with him, the 4 years I spent with him at Richmond, he taught me the simplicity of basketball. The Princeton way. A lot of times coaches have a lot of these fancy terms, play calling and so forth. Well, if we wanted to shoot the center from the low block to the elbow or the point, we just called it point. If we wanted to play through the center on the low block, we just called it low post play. And so he just taught me, like simplifying basketball, in its best form. Kyle Smith, we were together at Columbia for 4 years, 2010 to 14. Kyle, awesome. Taught me the analytical piece of it, while still being a normal person. Yeah, you do both a little bit. You can do the nerdball thing, but you also still have to be relatively cool when you do it. And he taught us that the things in which we do right now that carry weight here at Florida and Stanford, St. Mary's, this huge tree that he has grown. It's been remarkable just to see where everybody is today. Kobe Altman with the Cavaliers, Kevin Hovde with the Columbia, John Andrzejczyk just got his job at Campbell, Todd. We're all kind of growing and branching. Mike Rhoades, a couple years with Mike at Rice, and Mike has taken his career from Rice to VCU to now Penn State. Mike was a grinder. We had probably the worst talent of any Division I program back in 2014, 15. And we started out 1-8, 1-9 or something like that. Finished the year, and it doesn't sound great, finished the year 12-20. But we were 8-10 in Conference USA and very respectable. We ended up winning a game in the conference tournament against North Texas, lost to Louisiana Tech, who was the number 1 seed by 3. And really we had no business, being on the same floor as those guys, but those kids believed. They believed in Mike. That's where the coaching you talked about come in, earlier, Brennan, is you have to have, people like that, like Mike Rhoades and myself, Scott Parrott, J.D. Byers, that believe in the kids and show them that, regardless of, whatever talent level or, top ranking and so forth, if you have a cohesive unit on the floor at the right time, you can beat anybody. I remember that year we had a weekend where we had 2 back-to-back tough games against Kermit Davis's Middle Tennessee State team, where we won a double overtime game on a Thursday night. We flip it, we turn back around on Saturday. We're playing the number 2 team in the league, UAB, with Jared Haas and those really good teams, and we beat them in double overtime. And it was just an unbelievable weekend. And with kids that literally probably were D2, low D1 players. Wow. Coach Kruger, just kind of like with Coach, you like tie a bow on it with everything that, you learn. And now you just see like how to run a program from a Hall of Fame coach. Yeah. And Coach was the best at never getting too high, never getting too low, always having the same demeanor, whether it be you lost a tough one, you won a great one, next one, next play, next game. And he was just always about others. He was always about people. He was just, just somebody who I walk into the office and I, pinch myself every day to be able to work with somebody like him. And now Todd, Todd's just, he's young, he's fiery, he's confident, he knows who he is, he knows what he wants. And, when this whole new age of NIL and portal recruiting, building rosters, managing those rosters, there's nobody better. There's nobody I've been around better. Wow. At being able to build a roster and build it in the way in which, yes, Florida has resources, but at the end of the day, you still got to pick the right people in order to be on the floor and help you win games. And exactly. Last year, after we lost to Colorado, in the first round, we loved our roster and we wanted to retain, most of them. And we lost one, but we retained 6 that were key to doing this all over again. And then the 2 that we added, and I would say, the 3 that we added really took us over the top. And that was Elijah Martin, who I mentioned earlier, Ruben Chinielo, big center from Washington State, and Sam Alexis from UT Chattanooga. Those guys elevated our programs in ways that, obviously helped us win a national championship. So I know your original question was about those 3 coaches. I wanted to make sure that I, really went back and appreciated everybody.
Let me tell you, the guys that you mentioned, so many of them, I apologize because so many of those guys are friends. Mike Rhoades and I are like incredibly close, and I've known him since the first day he got hired with Shaka at VCU, and he was the guy that made, and Shaka knows this. He was the guy that really helped Shaka from a standpoint that Mike was a 10-year Division III head coach.
Yeah, that's right. That's
and
right.
Shaka had never coached a game.
So Mike and I, just to let you know, how we got to know each other was when I was working for Chris at Richmond. Mike would come over and he would play pickup with us.
How about that?
No, we became,
how about that?
Great friends, really cool. And, we hired Jamal Brunt, who was Mike's top assistant at Randolph Macon. He came over.
Jamal.
Yeah, he came over and he was our director of basketball, and he flipped it and went to assistant right away. So it's always you mentioned like your history with Mike. Everybody's got a history of some sort, or 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah, and Chris Mooney is incredible.
The best.
Just as a human being, number one, but as a basketball IQ and stuff, I love him and stuff. But that, you mentioned earlier, and I want to make sure because we have thousands of coaches from over 100 countries that listen. A lot of high school, a lot of college coaches, tons of assistant coaches. You mentioned about African American coaches. I am very, very sensitive to this because I've had so many coaches that we work with and that I've worked with. When I was in New York, I was the only white guy on the staff in New York. But you know what? I love LSU. Same thing. I was the only white guy. I embraced it because these were my brothers. These are my friends. But we know this. Unfortunately, a white guy can screw up and have a shitty team, a shitty record, make a million mistakes. No problem. He get another job. An African-American coach doesn't have a good outing in his first time. That might be it for him. And that sucks. And that sucks. So let's talk first about, and I had no idea we were going this way. It just came to me. And that's why I have no notes when we do this. I just listen to you.
I love it.
You have an obligation as a guy that is a veteran and you've seen everything. You're highly intelligent. Give me some things that if you were coaching, mentoring some of the terrific young talents we have in the community, what would you say to some of these guys? And I know as a BCA member and stuff like that, you guys feel that. Give me some things that you can help to those fellas.
Patience. Yeah, patience. So quickly, I think a lot of young, not just African American assistants, but young assistants in general. But young assistants are like so quick to like want to get to the ultimate prize versus waiting to understanding that if you have patience, that patience will allow you to learn about yourself and learn about the industry. And then when it's time for you to have whatever be a head coaching job or like myself being in this position at the University of Florida, now you're ready to be able to, not just make decisions, but also for me, it's, constantly helping Todd and seeing, how a program, can be run. And, Todd always says, like, this is, you're like my mentor, but at the end of the day, he's still my boss. And I understand that. So I don't try to like abuse that friendship, because at the end of the day, he's the one that's making the final decision. I think patience, I also think, just persevering through tough times because, Coach, you've been in this for a long time. You've been in this game for a long time. You've been through some tough stuff. I know I've been through some tough stuff. I have had 2 offers to be head coach. Neither of them fit my family at the time, my family dynamic. There's been other opportunities that I wanted that I've gotten passed over by, like you say, some coaches that have maybe mediocre records that get another chance. But I don't let that. You're kind of a little bit hurt in the moment. But
Sure.
Once it's over with, you got to think to yourself, okay, heck, I'm the associate coach at the University of Florida, or I'm one of the top assistants at Oklahoma. So life's not bad. Life's not bad. You got to also just have a realistic view of like, okay, where you're at in this time and place. Like nowadays, there are some good jobs out there, and there's some not some good jobs out there. And do I just jump on a job just for the sake of being a head coach and having that title? The way the landscape of this thing is going right now, there are some really tough D1 jobs out there that really, for me, as long as I've been in this, don't make as much sense. So, with young coaches, be patient, be resilient, just understand where you are in that time frame. And then also just try to work for somebody that you really believe in.
Let's talk about, I was watching earlier today, as I prep for this, I was watching Pat McAfee's show. I'm prepping for this show by listening to him. And he had Mark Messier, who's a friend of mine, a great Hall of Fame hockey player. He was with the Rangers and stuff when I was up there. And he gave an absolute masterclass on what coaching is in hockey. But when he's talking about it, it's the same in every sport. And his whole thing was, it's not about the X's and O's of any sport now. It's all about the relationships, the players trusting you, players loving you, you loving them back. And it was like, and this is from a Hall of Fame older hockey player who grew up the tough way. And all of a sudden, I'm saying, this guy's never coached.
Yeah, right.
But I'm saying, but he knew what a good coach was.
Yeah.
Right.
He's probably seen the change in times too. I mean, like you said, he played in the 80s and the 90s, and he was great. And he played with Gretzky, right? He played with all these different
up in Edmonton,
Oilers and Rangers and all that stuff. And I remember the Game 7 promise and stuff, in the Eastern Conference Finals, So, back then, a lot of us as players or coaches, whatever, we would like police each other. We'd police ourselves. We would call each other out, in the locker room. If somebody wasn't being tough, hey man, stop being so damn soft. Get your stuff, going, whatever. A lot more choice words than that, of course. But there was just more policing each other in the locker rooms. Now, there's just not really that. Kids may get a little bit anxious, if somebody is talking to them a certain kind of way. And you got to really get to know the person that you're dealing with and talking to. And like back when, again, it was mainly like, I treat all my players the same. Can't do that now. Can't do it now.
Exactly.
Can't treat everybody the same. Can't treat everybody the same because they're not all the same. They come from different backgrounds. They come from different walks of life. They come from different parts of the world, so not everybody is the same. So you can't treat them all the same. You got to treat them differently. And you got to know what makes them tick. You got to know what motivates them. You got to know, when to pull back, when they need pulling back and so forth. But what does help, again, is for you to have those moments on the sideline, in a game, in a huddle, at halftime, whatever it is, when, stuff gets, really tight, you got to have a relationship with them that well before you get into those moments.
You had a team last year, Carlin, and it looked like you had terrific internal leadership.
Yeah.
And I think if the coach is the only one on any sports team that's providing the leadership, there's no way your team's going to maximize their talent. I've only had teams that we won big, that it was the internal leadership of the players. It was not Chuck Daly, myself, UB Brown, myself. No, it was the players that were providing the leadership, just like you had just mentioned. Who was it on last year's team for you guys? And when I was with the Pistons, we had 6 guys that were leaders.
I was going to say, most of those are Hall of Famers too, right? I mean, like Isaiah and Rodman and
and they actually call it. They actually would say to us years after we would win and stuff. They would literally, when we would have, and you were going to go through this with your players when you have a reunion 10 years from now, the guys on this year's team. They would come back and say, we won despite you and Chuck, and we loved it. We loved it, because they believed it was them. And you know what? That's perfect.
Yeah, right.
In my opinion, that's perfect.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I would, obviously it goes to the top. Will Richard, again, 3 years in the program, built up equity, built up stock. Everybody knew his work ethic. Never missed a game in his career, barely missed practices, always available, always on time, always taking care of his academic stuff, respected in the building, respected in the community. Will Richard, his voice, he's in practice, he's talking, he's just, we go through a couple practices over the last couple of days and we'll miss that voice. Miss hearing Will. We miss Walt. Walt was the alpha. Walt was the guy that walked in here and hey, I'm the biggest, baddest dude in the state of Florida and in the country. Tell me I'm not. Elijah. Yeah, I would say it was really those 3 guys that provided that level of leadership, for us. They had the ball in their hands a lot. They made a ton of decisions. But they also were really good at keeping each other accountable, as well as when they would keep other guys on our team accountable. They handled the locker room. They weren't lawyers. Now, of course, the one thing that I would say is like they weren't perfect. Like, Walt and Elijah, they had opinions. Will had an opinion, there were times in which, we didn't buck heads a lot with those guys, but there are times in which we did. Nothing's ever perfect. But you'd rather have it like that than never, having any type of dialogue. And that's what made them great, for us. Now, fast forward, we're going to need a lot of that from our front court because we got all of our front court guys back.
Yes.
So now where the front court supported the back court last year, this year's back court is going to have to support the front court because the front court's, going to have that experience and that it factor,
that's great. I love that
from last year.
Yeah, I think when the essence of building a championship team, when I go around to different programs and it doesn't matter the sport, I always refer to Chuck Daly once told me after we finished coaching, he said, I just read a great coaching book. And I said, what's the book? Because I'd like to read. And he says, Good to Great by Jim Collins. I said, Chuck, that's a business book. And he said, every book I read is a coaching book because I read it and apply it to my profession. And he said, I said, why is it a good coaching book? And he said, because they tell you got to put the right people on the bus, which is the character of our players, right? Then you got to put the people in the right seats on the bus, which is defining of the roles, right? And then he said, you got to get the wrong people off the bus.
Amen.
And then he said, and then you get to play. I said, what do you mean I get to play? He said, then you got to have someone that knows who can drive the bus and where the hell they're going.
Yeah.
And he said, and I said to myself, it encompassed everything about building a squad. And you just, the way you described Todd is the thing that I'm so impressed with for such a young guy. He's had great teachers.
Yeah. Yes.
He's so freaking smart and he learns.
Yes.
A lot of guys are in the business a long time and haven't learned shit. Okay. But he's smart and he's learned.
He's learned from Randy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as a player, and Todd, wasn't a 5-star, wasn't a 4, probably wasn't a star at all. And he'll tell you that. But he was a good player. And, to go from Phoenix, Arizona to Northern California and be a recruited walk-on, they saw something inside. And
Right.
that was Randy and that was Kyle when they were on the staff at St. Mary's. So he watched those guys when he played for them. And then he goes and plays in Israel for a couple of years, goes in the business world, and then we have an open at Columbia. And I remember Kyle vividly after year one, like I think I got a monster out there, but I got to get him into the industry. And it was Todd. And so we ended up hiring him. Yeah, we ended up hiring him in 2012. 2012, at the end of the year, 2012. End of the summer, as a matter of fact, because Kobe Altman, president of Cavaliers, left to go to Cleveland to work under Chris Grant. So then in comes Todd. And Todd, unbelievable job, did a great job with our defense, especially in our fourth year, which was 2013-14. And then he goes and works for Bruce for a couple years. Learned from Bruce, who he played for in Maccabi.
Bruce being Bruce Pearl.
Yep. Bruce Pearl, right.
Yep.
And he had played for Bruce Pearl in Maccabi games years before, so they developed a relationship. Now he goes and works for Bruce as director of basketball, then assistant coach, learns a lot about high major basketball, SEC, under a great coach. And then he gets the opportunity in San Francisco, essentially be the head coach of Waiting, because he took a assistant job from the SEC and he goes to the WCC. Well, he wasn't going to WCC without getting some level of assurance that he was going to have a chance to get the job, once they turn it around. And that's what Kyle does. So then he goes to San Francisco, works under Kyle for a couple more years as associate coach. Then he gets elevated. Now he's got his plan for what he wants to do and how he wants to run a program. And he's done it, with San Francisco masterfully because, quite honestly, like the last time I think they had ever had an at-large at San Francisco was like 30-something years before. He went back in 2021.
Wow.
And then you fast forward to, 3 years later where we are now, you're right. He's young. He's brilliant. He's charismatic. He's got about all the right stuff.
So when you're sitting there, and I remember when he got the job and he came in as, quote, I'm not paraphrasing, this is not his quote, but he's an analytics whiz. Okay. That's one of his strengths, one of them. Mm-hmm. But there's so much more. Analytics are a nice tool in the toolbox, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Him and Sapphire and stuff like that. But there's so much more to coaching. Mm-hmm. I thought your defense was absolutely elite. Your rebounding was absolutely spectacular. The best rebounding team I saw in the country. And your offense was the diversity of your offense that you guys ran. It had everything. It had pick and rolls. It had post play. It had ball movement. Rarely do you see a good college team that checks every box on both sides of the ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you spend time developing that?
Again, this is obviously about the players and the talent, of course. Now, the thing I think what people realize is that you can do it without, top 100 players. We're the first team to win a national championship, without a single top 100 player on our roster. Again, it's about the fit.
Wow.
The year before we went to the NCAAs and lost in the first round of Colorado, we lost that game 102 to 100. And in college, you would think that game probably went double overtime.
Yes.
It was a regulation game.
How about that?
Because we were terrible defensively. We were 94th, defensively in the country.
I did not know that.
Oh, we were
okay.
Awful. Now, look, I'm not going to even throw any of our guys under the bus. But we just did not have a defensive identity. We couldn't get stops consistently. It just, we knew we had to get better because our offense, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say we finished 8th in 23-24 on offense.
Wow.
94th defensively. And that was obviously something that we needed to correct. So, of course, we talked about Elijah. We talked about Ruben, Sam coming in, and we still were able to maintain the core. We lost Zion Pullen, who was a first-team All-League guy. The year before, we lost Tyrese Samuel, who was a second-team All-League guy the year before. and we lost, Riley Kugel, who ended up transferring to Mississippi State. So those are our key losses. But the 6 guys we were able to retain, and then the 3 guys we were able to bring in, we thought that would have been an upgrade for us in the terms of being more stout defensively based off of what Elijah had done in his career and based off of what Ruben had done in his career. And it was just a short one at Washington State, but strong, tough, physical body. A guy that, is just, muscles, all throughout. And,
I love him. Yeah.
And you probably would because you watch and you see like the things in which he does. It's not like he's out there scoring double figures every single night. But the duck ins, the Gortats.
That's what I love him.
I know. He's clearing the lane for everybody, to get downhill. This year we're going to throw it to him a lot more, so people just can't sit on, think he's just going to duck you in and not going to. No, we're going to throw it to him a lot more because he can score down there. Where his real value, other than the Gortats offensively, was he's constantly leaning on you defensively and offensively. He goes after every rebound. He makes you, he just wears you down. And if you look in the Final Four, in the first half of the Auburn game, in the semifinals, we're getting destroyed in the paint.
Yep.
I had some choice words for our front court at halftime. It was documented and so forth. Even though I probably do that like once every month or once every other month, whatever. It happens, right?
It's effective when you do it not every day.
That's when they hear you. They won't hear you every day if you do it. So you picked the right 100%. Time to do it. And that was the right time. We were getting killed in the paint, getting killed on the glass. Broom had 12 points. Shady Johnson had like 8. Scoring at will in the paint. And I'm just challenging our front court guys, and I said, it's got to show up right now. And I looked at Ruben and I said, you're the strongest, toughest, most physical guy, and they are just putting you in the basket every single time. This needs to show up right now or we're going home. They're challenging your manhood, your manhood, your manhood, your manhood. Looked at all 4 front court guys. They flipped it in the second half. Chinyelo, outstanding. Gave up 1 basket in a one-on-one situation, but you could see the front court of Auburn wearing down. You could see it happening. And, when you throw out 4 guys like what we have, that's pretty much what they do. We have 2 guys that have started, 2 guys that come in and replace. Then we bring those starters back. Then we bring those reserves in. Then we're mixing and matching those guys, and they're running up and down the floor. They're keeping us in their offense, and there's constant motion on offense, and they're creating havoc on defense, and you can see it. Even the Houston game, us fouling out Tugler and Francis being in foul trouble, and the really Roberts, the lefty, really good veteran player.
Yep.
Like, they started to kind of wear down a little bit as well, and our guys stayed fresh, and that's why we were able to get some stops. And then we had 9 consecutive stops in the championship game. At one point,
ridiculous. That's ridiculous against Houston. Wow.
I know. And then in the last 3 minutes, I want to say they had 4 turnovers in the last 3 minutes of the game. So we really did a good job. They were up by 12 with 15 minutes to go. We ended up outscoring them 35-21 to end the game.
It's unreal.
Credit to our guys.
And Kelvin's incredible.
Incredible.
Yeah, one of my favorites. Let me ask you some basketball questions. You talked about rebounding. I think it's the weakest part of the game nowadays in college level, pro level, but mainly in the college game because in the off season, the players work with trainers, individual work. No one's practicing rebound. No one's practicing defense. No one's playing 5-on-5. It's 1-on-0. And now all of a sudden you come in and how do you guys practice rebounding? Because I thought you were, and the SEC is a great rebounding league in general.
Yeah.
But I thought you guys were that was a difference maker for you guys.
We'll work on rebounding technique. We'll work on, we'll do like rebound break, get a defensive rebound, push it up the floor. Of course, we emphasize it. I think a lot of what we do too, Coach, is we will. This is where the analytics come in. We'll look and see, in terms of what our rebounding rates are, and how they stand. We're comparing ourselves always against the numbers. I think the other thing that we do is, we do our own stats. We call it the hustle stats, and we can see, which guys are blocking out every single time, which guys are, have missed blockouts, which guys have, and people, I know a lot of people will ask what this is, but blind blockouts where you turn the opposite way, away from the basket, and you don't see where the ball is, we'll track that as well. So
like, is that like face guarding someone or going out to seek him out?
Or like, like if you're in, let's say you're in defensive position and, you're one pass away and then the shot goes up, we will teach blocking out and watching the flight of the ball as you're blocking out and turning versus turning to the inside and looking at your man without seeing the flight of the ball. That's a blind blockout.
Okay, good. That's good. I'm going to give you credit for that one time, and then I own it. That's mine.
You got it. Now. You got it. Also give it to Jonathan Sapphire too. He's the one. So we'll look at that. We'll look at all those things. And, we'll always just say, keep your eye on the ball. Keep your eye on the ball. When you block out, never lose sight of it. Never lose track. And then, for the guards, it's going to be a little bit different. The bigs are always underneath the rim for the most part. The guards are the ones that have to, kind of track, where the ball's coming off. Some of it has to do with our ball and hold transition defense, guys that can track down rebounds out of the area and so forth. So these are things in which we're always studying. These are things in which we're always working through.
Let me ask you and every coach is different. Are you doing quote unquote rebounding drills? Or is it mainly in your 5-on-5 or everything that you do when you're playing shell defense, when you're scrimmaging 5-on-5 and we're going, and we're going to run out after you get a rebound. How do we mainly practice rebounding?
I would say it's a combination of a little bit of both, Coach. I mean, like there are going to be times where we split up on two ends and we work on, like I say, the technique stuff. We'll go 2-on-2. Yeah, we'll go 2-on-2. Where we got, two guys on defense and then two guys outside the 3-point line. And, we're working on, one guy, one pass away, another guy, two passes away. We'll skip it. Now they get to the midline, shot goes up. Now they got to go and block out.
Find a guy.
We'll, like I said, the rebound outlet drill, coaches shoot it up, 5 guys on the inside, the guys on the outside, crash. Obviously, if offense gets it, they can go score. Defense gets it, they come down, they corral it. Now they're looking at outlet. Now we're running. But I wouldn't say that like we don't put a bubble. We don't put a bubble up on the rim
like Kelvin does. Yeah,
right. I know he does it, and
no, I know
it has worked for Coach a lot, and I hear they do it quite often. Which is why they're so stinking good at it, man.
Started a month ago, I think.
Yeah, man. Yeah, they're unbelievable at it. That's what I'm saying. Like us, when Tugler fouled out, that was huge for us because he's a hard guy to keep off that glass. But yeah, so it's just a lot of it is who you recruit too. We knew that Ruben Chinyelo was a good rebounder from Washington State. Even from out of high school when he, played for the NBA Global Academy. Condon, was a good rebounder in high school. He was an Australian rules football player by trade, but he was athletic. He went after the ball. Thomas Houck, same thing in high school, good rebounder. Micah Hanlockton, we got him from Marshall, had an unbelievable rebound rate. So, we're looking at all that stuff,
Yeah.
It's things in which we do on the floor, but it's also the players, that make it work.
So do you do anything to work on offensive rebounding? Because I think that is one of the absolute things that's a difference maker. The more second shots you can get, having Rodman, I became a really good offensive rebounding coach, because the guy would just give you, 10 extra shots a game, and he never shot it. He always got it and threw it to someone else, But is there anything now? Honestly,
Mm.
we didn't have any things to do it. All we did is we emphasized that we're going to win if we rebound and we defend, which is an old
That's
Princeton
right.
Pete Carrillo.
That's it.
What two things are you emphasizing? That was the two things we emphasized. Never talked a word about offense. But was there anything offensive rebounding that you guys do specifically?
We emphasize those two things too: defending and rebound, all the time. When it comes to offense, I think a lot of it is our offense. We get the rim runner, going down the floor, and for early post-up situations. So now we got somebody down there. Anytime we throw it into the post, the other post is, diving. So when a shot goes up, we're it's just mano down there. Our
Sure.
two bigs versus your two bigs. And then we're going to always send at least one other wing, to the glass. So is there anything that we're teaching in particular? Not really. We talked to them about, wedge rebounding, especially if a shot goes up from the corner, get the long rebound on the opposite side. But for the most part, most of our shots are going to come middle of the floor. And so we just have guys that are, really good at winning that battle. If you can throw the ball ahead in defensive transition, more often than not, it's going to be a guard back there. So if there's a guard back there and the big is posting up a guard, now all of a sudden he's got a mismatch and now everybody's scrambling defensively. So, you should have advantages, when the shot goes up, especially if you're pushing the ball off the floor effectively.
I want to switch us to offense a little bit, but when you guys, I think it was the Houston game, in the beginning of the game, you guys couldn't score worth a damn, which is not surprising because they're so elite defensively. They're so tough. But I thought your offense started to click when you had rim runners all of a sudden. And those guys, they just got down. I think now with all this, I'm going to be careful what I say, 5-out offense that's being run at the college and pro level, that rim running by many teams is out of the game. And I think it's so damn important because now you're making that big get tired. But more importantly, there's no better post up than in transition posting a guy up in the middle of the darn lane.
And early.
But I thought that was a difference maker for you. And early, yeah. I thought that was a real difference maker for you guys. You got the ball ahead to guys and they were getting layups even,
A couple times, yeah.
I just... So,
I would agree with that.
So on your rim running, is that an every time thing you get possession after misses, after makes, everything? What's
time.
Your philosophy on
Every
that?
time. Every time. When we start doing 5-on-5 work, we'll go 5-on-0, and we have our big that's out front. If we have two bigs, we play with on the floor. Opposite big, if he doesn't get the defensive rebound, is rim running. Trail big, runs to the trail spot. And if a guard gets a rebound, then those two bigs are competing, for a layup over the top.
Got it.
And to your point, when we have it going, especially defensively, we're really tough to stop in transition because those bigs, and we have elite athletes that are front court guys. All four of them can rim run like deers, and they are going and going and going. And we want to play a 40-minute game like that.
Yes.
And to your point, that's where attrition starts to occur. Not just with the other team's bigs, but just the other team in general. Because you're constantly, like with Walter Clayton, you got to guard Walter 94 feet. Because Walt would throw it ahead. He would throw it over top to a big. He would throw it ahead to the guard. He would cross the floor. He would pull up from deep. You had to guard him all over the court. And when our guys were going, like they're capable, that front court was allowing our guards to, be who they were last year because of their athleticism and toughness. And I think toughness can also be, it doesn't have to be like little things that you do, like, getting a loose ball or whatever. I think toughness is also conditioning.
Yes.
Right? Like if you're the more well-conditioned team or player on the floor, mentally that can really affect, your opponent if you're just never going to stop doing what you do over and over and over again.
Alabama in your league, they had a deal which was the same as Mike D'Antoni did when he came into to the Phoenix Suns coming from Europe, and everyone always had either the nearest big after a made basket take the ball out, or a designated four-man take it out, etc., whatever. But Mike D'Antoni, he just said the nearest guy to the ball, and even Steve Nash would take the ball out, throw it in, and get it right back and go. But and I know with Ryan Pannone when he was at Alabama, their rule was, and the reason I know it, he didn't come over to the house and tell me, is that at one of our clinics that he did for us, he said our rule is you must get the ball in less than 1 second, the nearest person. If not, your ass is out. And they just wanted to put the pressure on you. They didn't care who took it out, but the nearest person to that ball, take it out, get it in, and let's go. And I thought, are you more big oriented to take it out, or you don't care?
Big. Yeah, no, we're more big.
Yeah.
There were times in which, sometimes the guard would be there and he was just grabbing and, outlet it. We'd rather those guards get up the floor, but we like for our bigs.
Exactly.
To take it out.
That's great. Now, that leads into the next thing. With this quote unquote 5-out, small ball, positionless basketball, every kid you recruit wants to be a 3 or a 4, even if they're 6'10", 6'11", because they think that's their position in the pros, even though we don't have real bigs in the pros that can really post up and do the things that bigs are supposed to do. But you're one of the few teams in the country that's really committed to playing two bigs. I think it's a huge advantage. A huge advantage.
No, we love it too, because it just gives you that, that extra comfort on the glass.
Yeah.
When you play like that, and again, we got guys that go after the ball. So, it gives us that advantage of rim pressure. It gives us that advantage of, scoring in the paint, and being able to do some different things on the floor with how versatile our guys are.
So you guys, I call you guys an elite offensive team because of the blended things you do offensively. It's not one thing you do. It's multiple things. It's what I'd like to say is you take the best of almost so many things that are done in basketball and you put it into the Gator style of play.
Yep.
And so you're always putting pressure on someone, either with pick and rolls, with movement by hitting the elbows and cutting, etc. And you can almost, dribble ats where guys are coming, cutting guys to the basket. Then all of a sudden, Walter Clayton coming behind, getting a dribble handoff from a 5, more effective than a pick and roll because now there's no hedging or blitzing because they don't know if he's going to even give it. So many beautiful things that come in offense. How did that all evolve?
Kevin Hovde, who just left us, head coach at Columbia, masterful as an offensive coordinator, very diligent in his film study, diligent in terms of how teams play, how effective can we be versus drop coverage? How effective can we be against hard hedging? How effective can we be against switching? How effective can some of the concepts that we like to throw out there be against all these particular defenses? And once we figured out those things, it helped us, know who we are and know where we can put our guys in the right positions. Now you still got to go out there and you got to execute, and, we had, obviously great players to be able to execute what we wanted, what Kevin and Todd wanted. But it really just comes down to schematically, how to take advantage of our advantage on the floor, versus switching. Our advantage on the floor, versus the drop, versus hard hedging, all these different things that every team in our league is going to throw at you. And I'm not saying anything that people don't already know. We all study each
100%.
other. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, how good are you going to be at the different nuances, throughout a 40-minute game, when people start to change defenses on you? And Kevin and Todd always had an answer, for that, whatever somebody was throwing at us. And so our advantage has been, the skill of our bigs, Thomas and Alec being able to keep us in offense.
One of the things that I think really took people, it really put them in shock. But I know it's something that Randy Bennett's been doing for 25 years. Was the way when people were playing pick and roll, and you would take that weak side post guy and just duck him into the lane hard, and in essence, screened the defender in the lane so that the guy coming off a ball screen could literally take the ball to the basket and lay it up uncontested at times. And people are going, I don't understand it. Other coaches going, that's got to be an offensive foul. It's got to be this and that. And to me, it was one of the greatest innovations I've seen to the game because of the way it was played. And I'm not saying Randy Bennett would say, Brendan, you asshole. He said, I've been doing this shit for 25 years. What do you mean it's an innovation? But the execution of it under pressure was so amazing to me. I thought it really came to light because of your personnel. Randy's always been just an absolutely incredible coach, but he doesn't have the bigs that you guys had. He's always had nice bigs, but you got elite bigs that execute in a league that's absolutely full of bigs, so that's what made him even more impressive to me.
Those duck-ins are great because a lot of times, you get that one-on-one opportunity, obviously to duck in, you can throw it over the top, throw it into that guy, and he's scoring. But the other thing it does, like you said, sometimes it clears the lane. It takes the shot blocking away, at the rim. Because you still have to play post defense. And there's nothing illegal about it,
Right.
That person has every right to that space. And if he beats you to that space and he does a good job, then, he's won the battle, whether or not he gets the ball or not. And, Randy has been great at it, like you mentioned, for years, decades.
Yeah.
In fact, Gonzaga did it, has done it for a while with Few and Tommy Lloyd's teams.
Because
Sean
they got their ass kicked by Randy's teams. So they learned. And then
Right.
put it into their system.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. Sean Miller, he's done it a little bit. He did it when he was at Xavier, when he would play with two bigs, Fremantle and I forget the other kid. So, we've seen other people do it. I do think, like you said, it does create an advantage, especially if you can, we have 4 or 5 really good ones. That's an advantage, just to be able to throw different bodies out there. And, we've tried to, be, versatile in terms of if a guy gets injured, a front court guy gets injured, playing smaller, we try not to. I mean, we're good at what we do. Our guys are really, they really believe in it. And so, we're going to keep on trying to master it as best as possible.
When you go on defense, and let's say you had Condon and Jimalou out there, and all of a sudden you're playing against, let's say LSU this year, at the end of the year, they're playing with 4 guards, and 1 big, now you got almost a mismatch where one of your bigs has got to play against a guard, but you never what I call give in, and you don't give in to small ball, you still play big. And I think it's really important that you do that. How do you adjust your coverage to a guard playing against one of your bigs? Because now they're taking him away from the basket. How do you coach those guys defensively?
I just think it really comes down to, what the other team's strengths are. I mean, maybe we'll be in a little bit more of a drop. Maybe we'll be, we'll ice it on the side. Maybe we'll switch it. Because our bigs, now, and credit to those guys, they can really slide their feet.
Yep.
They can really move laterally. They're good at, taking deep angles, not getting just ripped, completely, in a straight line. So these are things in which we also work on, within practice and so forth. But, to your point, I think that's the biggest point is we try to stay big regardless if the other team is 4 or 5 out.
With your guards this year, Walter Clayton and those guys, I thought they were absolutely fantastic when you would rim, your rim running, because you get so many defensive stops, you're coming down on a break a lot. And if you can't throw the ball inside, you can't throw it ahead, which your team did exceptionally well, throwing the ball ahead to your wings and them attacking. Walter would come down and go into a drag screen.
Mm-hmm,
What
mm-hmm.
what was the teaching on that to know when to go into that? And I think nowadays, because that defense is not really set up, where do you want that screen set? I don't think a lot of teams go into the detail of what it was. We used to run 100 years ago with Isaiah and those guys we've always done a bunch of drag screens because we thought it was so effective in transition. What was your teaching points on that?
I mean, we can run different types of balls. We run them on the side, where free throw line extended. Sometimes it'd be corner field, sometimes it'd be empty. We could run them in the middle of the floor, in the middle third of the floor. And really, it was like to Walt, Elijah, and Will's discretion, where they got these ball screens, coming from. And
That's great.
Because of that element, it wasn't like we were calling plays in transition. We really didn't call a lot of plays in the half court. We tried to stay away from it. We tried to just let our guys play, which I think was really good because, the longer you can stay in your offense and get that thing from the first side to a second to a third side, the more likely the defense is going to break down at some point. And so these drags and these early ball screens that we would set, man, let me tell you something. Walter Clayton, if he's coming at you full speed, number one, if he's coming at you full speed, it's a really scary proposition because he may just pull it from 30 feet.
Wow.
Now, if he uses the ball screen, now if you switch it and, or if you're in a drop, he's going to shoot that. If you're up there, he's going to go by you. If you hard hedge it, he's going to get off the ball and he's going to find somebody. Now you're going to have a 4-on-3. So you have all these different options, especially with an elite player like that can manipulate ball screens however he wants, and his willingness to throw out of the ball screen and not have to just get the assist. Like, I love him to death, and I coached him at Oklahoma. I had Trae Young. And early on in Trae's career, he was trying to get the assist. Well, sometimes the best play is to start the hockey assist to somebody else who can go make the assist.
Yeah.
And obviously Trae's, matured and grown, since that point. He's doing great with the Hawks, But that's where Walt was at his best, was he was okay with just getting off of that thing and then letting the next guy go make the play for the betterment of the group and betterment of the team.
I'll tell you what, that's elite coaching stuff that you're sharing with our listeners. I mean, that is phenomenal. I'll tell you, Carl, as your role now, not at Florida, but just in the basketball coaching community now, you have a real leadership role, I believe, because I think so many coaches, nothing to do racially, black, white. I mean, I think you're terrific. So, I mean,
thank you.
I just, how do you perceive, because I think self-awareness is so important in coaching and playing. You have to know who the hell you are. And I remember I went to work for UB Brown, who was my high school coach with the Hawks, and I am scared to death. Back then, we only had two assistants. It's Mike Fratello and I. My first day of rookie camp, but UB's coaching the team as opposed to now the head coaches don't do it. And he's coaching, and we're ready to start practice, and there's 3,000 people in the gym to watch us. I am scared to death. And he walks over to me and he says, "Hey, just relax. Don't try to be me. Be yourself. It's good enough."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, "Damn." For you, helping coaches, all coaches, I know we shared before, what are the things that you try to do, to make yourself better each and every year, because you have this incredible growth mindset, because you're not satisfied where you are. Not, I don't mean location. I mean, just you want to just keep getting better to help your players get better. That's what I mean. So how do you learn best for yourself?
I think selflessness, just understanding, like, I don't look at the person I work with or work for. Like my last two uh, bosses, Todd and Kevin, we had worked together at different spots. And then I ended up being, I ended up assisting these guys. And that's not something that I'm thinking to myself, like, well, damn, what the hell? I mean, how come, like, no, I'm more or less like, they trust me, to be a key member of their staff to help them in this program move forward. And I take that very seriously. So the self-awareness piece and understanding, like, being a coach is not just, coaching, the guys on the floor. It's, how can I, assist in making the head coach in this program that much better? I think for Todd, him hiring me here, number one, he had a previous relationship and a good one at Columbia, and we always stayed in contact. And, when he got this particular opportunity, in the SEC, I'm pretty confident I was on his mind in terms of bringing him bringing me here because of the years of service and the history and the success of the programs in which I've helped build, not built, I've helped. Chris Mooney, be able to stay at Richmond for a long time, or help Kyle early in his head coaching career move forward, and Mike Rhoades, and so forth. And so I think Todd saw the selflessness in me, the attitude. I understand I got a really good attitude. I love people. I make it about others, not nearly about myself. I think he wanted that on the staff as well. And so I do understand that at some point, of course I want, to run my own program, but it has to be the right situation, number one. It has to be the right situation because this is a situation I'm in right here at Florida is pretty damn good. And I know that. That's the self-awareness piece. It's not looking ahead. It's looking about where you are right now. Like, we just came off a national championship, and now we have a chance with this front line that we have coming back and these talented guys that we have coming in, to, possibly, do it again. Now it's going to be challenging. Coach, you've been there. You've had your, you won 2 in a row, and so you understand how hard it is. And we understand it's going to be hard here too, but, the responsibility that comes along with it is something I embrace and I love. And I really appreciate how, the administration and the people within the program treat me. I mean, I feel when I go out to dinner or I'm with my wife and, someone comes up and says, Coach, great job, this and that, that's very satisfying. And where I really feel it is the parents and the kids that I've coached throughout all these years, here in the last few years at Florida, great relationships with people. I mean, Will Richard and myself are very close. Al, his dad, mom, Helen, these relationships you start building with these kids and these people, they end up not just being for the years that they're with you, they end up being a lifetime. And it's done
better. One of the sayings that I adopted, people you say, well, what's coaching? Because I do a lot of consulting in the business world. And it's the same thing. Coaching is the same skill set as parenting. It's about taking people where they can't take themselves.
Yes.
Even your children, you know what I mean? As a parent, and I think, but that's that selfless thing where you're not worried about coaching is not about my record. It's not about how many games you and I have won. It has nothing to do with that. It's about how we helped someone else.
That's right.
And I think the most beautiful thing about coaching nowadays is that Carlin Hartman is going to be maybe the most influential person that many of your players are ever going to come in contact with. And you're going to be the person that maybe showed them the most love and caring that will change their life. And you accept that responsibility. You embrace it.
That's right.
Because that's why you're coaching. Yeah.
Well,
and I think
coaching to you is that way. Coaching to me is like paying it forward for those who did for me when I was growing up. my high school coach, John Roth, my AAU coach, Mickey Walker, Michael Hamilton, all these guys in the Buffalo, Western New York area, Fazri Ansari, that did for me, and now it's like I feel a responsibility to pay it forward to others, just like they did with me. Taking a kid from a single parent home and allowing me to, go realize my dreams and play high level college basketball at Tulane and so forth. I learned a lot of those things from the people, in Buffalo, Reggie Weatherspoon, all these, influential guys, that came across, my path. And like, I feel it every day. Like I went home about a month ago to accept an award, Distinguished Alumni Award. And I felt like it was very important for me to go and accept that award, not just because of my accomplishment. It was more to honor the memory of my mother and the people that were there for me as I was, growing into adulthood. Like you mentioned, UB Brown was your high school coach? So,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I mean, like your high school coach goes to the NBA and he hires one of his former players. Like that's paying it forward if I've ever heard of anything. Like that's incredible.
And I still can't believe it. I only played for him in 10th grade, and then he went and became a college coach, and then he circled all the way into the pros. And I remember coming home, and my mom was a junior high teacher, and it was time to go to college on scholarship and stuff. And I said, Mom, I'm going to switch the school I signed with, and I'm going to go to this other school. She said, why? I said, because I want to be a high school coach like Coach Brown. And she said, oh, what? And then, so that's, and that's all I wanted to be. And I never got to be one, unfortunately. I've never been a high school coach, but that was my whole intent on life. I never dreamt of coaching in college. I never dreamt of coaching in the pros. Never dreamt of 53 years of doing this stuff. Never.
But somebody invested in you.
Ever.
Somebody invested in you, right?
Yeah, and everywhere along the line, like you mentioned, people were thoughtful. And my first college job was with the great Dick Vitale at the University of Detroit.
Oh my goodness, man!
At 21 years of age, and only because I used to work his basketball camps in the summer as a college player. And he says, and this is when Power 5, there was no such thing, but there was only major college and college division. And we were Marquette, Louisville, DePaul, University of Detroit, and there's 2 assistants on the staff.
Incredible.
Me and some other guy. And I thought I hit the lottery, $9,000 a year. And, and look at Dickie V has become, I mean, just the most incredible human being
now,
of all
that
time.
one I didn't know about.
What he does.
I don't know about Coach Vitale.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that one. I did know about, I remember you on the sideline with the Pistons and with with Coach Daly and those great teams. I remember Atlanta. I didn't know about Vitale. I mean, you have a lot of books. You wrote one, right? I mean, of this.
Yeah, a couple of them. Yeah.
I mean, that is basketball royalty at its best.
My wife says, though, she'll say, all you do is talk on the phone and do these stupid things in your office all day, you and Zach, but all we're trying to do is help coaches. And Carlin Hartman, my friend who I love to death, you have really helped coaches today. What you shared is just fabulous. And you're a special man. And I mean that. You are a man's man. You're a one of one. And we are so honored to have you on today to help coaches, because that's what you're about. Can't wait to see you in person, my friend.
Same here, Coach. I appreciate you having me on. Very nice, kind words. And I think we all have the same goal and the same attitude when it comes to, paying it forward for others. So
enjoy Gainesville, one of the great towns in America.
Pretty cool.
One of the great places to live. Yeah, it's a really cool place. But thanks again, Carlin. I appreciate you.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you.